Batting in the John Carter slot in this year's release schedule, we have Jack the Giant Slayer, which is a movie that Bryan Singer has been working on for what feels like 8 or 10 years. Like, I think he was even working on this before he was working on his last movie, and then now it's finally here. It's actually a lot like John Carter in that it's, you know, pretty good, but not awesome. And when a movie is as expensive as this movie is, I think it was like nearly 200 million bucks, it basically has to be awesome or everyone's gonna say it completely sucks. It doesn't completely suck, but it's just sort of kind of okay. It's one of these things where it's the story behind the story. So if you're familiar with Jack and the Beanstalk, you've got Jack, a beanstalk, and giants. And basically everything plays out the way you would expect it to, but it's a really sort of bland staging of the story, if I may put it that way. Like, nothing really pops out. There's some weak-ass CGI. Everything sort of happens the way you would expect it to happen. The hero is very dashing and the princess needs help. And, you know, like, it doesn't really take a bite out of the story in an interesting way. It just sort of gives you some more context for what was going on up that stock. So what you watch instead? Well, a movie that I continuously bat for is another one of these things where they tried to tell you the story behind the story. It came out a few years ago, also in the springtime, also one of those movies that cost way too much money and everyone hated it. It's Ridley Scott's Robin Hood. I actually really like that movie. It's significantly more interesting than I think people gave it credit for at the time. I can see why it wasn't what people wanted, because it's a very strange way to tell the Robin Hood story. It's both a prequel to what we consider the normal Robin Hood set of events, but it is also featuring a Robin and Marian who are in their 40s, so kind of theoretically a little bit older than we usually associate with the characters. But it's actually really good. It's really well thought out. It has a very interesting sort of take on the politics of 12th century England, and the love story between Robin and Marian, I think, as a somewhat Robin Hood aficionado myself, I think is actually one of the best takes on that story that has ever been put on film. And obviously Ridley Scott, awesome battle scenes, charging down the beach on a horse and blah, 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 blah. So there's plenty of good stuff in that. Substantially more interesting to watch than, unfortunately, Jack the Giant Slayer.